No beating around the bush, you saw the title. Best open world games for Steam Deck. Two of my favorite genres are horror games and open world games. To find a combination of the two is a rare treat. And this game is one that I love talking about because it doesn't get nearly enough attention. And maybe if it does, we'll get the next installment. If you're familiar with games like the Resident Evil remakes, you'll feel right at home in the beautifully raised world of The Evil Within 2. This is one of Tango Gameworks' earlier endeavors, the guys behind, among other things, the revered Hi-Fi Rush. Since this game's a few years old now, it runs beautifully on a Steam Deck, and I run it with all settings on high, and it gives me a very solid 30 to 40 frames per second. And I know that some people balk at the idea of 30 frames per second, but this is a slower paced game that's very playable at 30. What makes this game different from other open world horror games like, for example, Dying Light or Dead Island, where you run parkour like an Olympic athlete on speed, is that in this game, stealth and shadows are your friend. In this horribly twisted town of Union, aka any town in central US, everything is hostile. Inhabitants have been transformed into horribly disfigured characters of themselves, but much worse things roam the street, and a simple outing for a quick upgrade you spotted usually become an epic tale of survival. And believe me, you're gonna want those upgrades, both for your gear and weapons, but also for Sebastian himself. You get to do it all in this amazing looking lounge chair. This game is atmospheric, difficult, and incredibly fun. The only thing I'd knock it for is that the first half of the game is a little bit slower compared to the breakneck fast pace of the second half. Oh, and Sebastian is probably the most boring protagonist ever.
What the hell? Hey, let me out of here!
Which, ironically, only gives the game more character. On the other side of the spectrum, a game everybody's talking about, Cyberpunk 2077. Everybody knows about Cyberpunk's redemption story, but what you don't know is how well it runs on the Steam Deck. Check this out. Using FSR2 and mostly medium settings, we can get a very respectable 30 frames per second in pretty much any situation that is in the base game. And here's a bunch of settings I tried out. All in all, this game is perfectly playable on the Steam Deck. The new area, Dogtown, however, looks a bit less rosy, and especially driving sequences can really tank the frame rate. I would argue though that this is a game that doesn't really need to be played at 60, but a solid 30 is good enough. Which, granted, Dogtown doesn't really give you either. The base game is perfectly playable. Playing games like these on the Steam Deck makes me remember why I love handheld gaming in the first place. Taking this beautifully realized, dense and lived-in world of Cyberpunk on the go is such a treat. Being able to experience all of its fun side content and main story, and having Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba both in the palm of your hand is amazing. Don't overthink that. And with its free 2.0 upgrade and Phantom Liberty expansion, the game has finally come full circle and delivered on most of what it promised all the way back in 2020. It's been a long time coming. What I love most about open world games is the sheer variety of them. Everybody knows the GTA 5s and Skyrims of the world, but limiting ourselves to that would be a crime to humanity. So, for this list, I've tried to add a nice variety of open world games so that there's something for everybody here. I'm also a sucker for a good underdog story, and here's another hidden gem that not a lot of people talk about, Mad Max. This is really such a fun game. This came out in the early years of the PS4 and the Xbox One, and holds up surprisingly well. Got very decent graphics with cool lighting and effects. And granted, things like the character models don't look as well as I remember them from back in 2015, but it all still looks very decent. But let's talk performance. The Steam Deck is perfect for AAA games from this era. With all bells and whistles on high, I was able to get a consistent frame rate between 80 and 60 frames per second. Cap it at 60 and I don't think you'd see a single drop. Mad Max at its core is about a man getting his car stolen from him, like John Wick. And like John Wick, he'll stop at nothing to get it back. And the gameplay is where this game really shines. The many different mechanics of the game come together as a beautiful whole. And there's the incredibly satisfying vehicular combat, the brutal fighting mechanics, and the progression to the world of Mad Max as you take down warlord after warlord, slowly wresting the wastelands from its grip. It's all beautifully done, and the 40-hour campaign stays fresh because of the deep upgrading system of both Max and your car. If you loved Mad Max Fury Road, you've always wondered how it would be to live that movie, try out this game. Believe me, it's worth it. This next game inspired Mad Max in many ways. But one thing Mad Max did first was the vehicle combat. In fact, for many people, the vehicle combat in this game is the weak point. And to that, all I can say is, you're wrong. Batman Arkham Knight is the perfect combination of Arkham City and Arkham Asylum. And I know that's a controversial statement, as this game was criticized by many as the black sheep of the Arkham games. It's just so much fun. First, let's talk performance. Because at launch, this was one of the biggest criticisms of the game. On the PS4, it ran like a slideshow, and even bigger PCs had trouble running it at a decent pace. And funnily enough, last year's Switch release had all of these same problems.
Batman Arkham Knight is an absolute disaster on Switch.
On the Steam Deck, however, with all the settings on max, we get very respectable frame rates. Even during vehicle combat, when things are at its most chaotic, frames don't drop below 30. And setting your cap here will give you very stable performance. If you'd rather go for performance over graphics, however, downgrading to medium, which will still give you a very nice looking game, will yield you a nice, solid 60 frames per second. Besides that, getting it to run on the Steam Deck was a breeze. No tweaking or installing annoying launchers, just install and go. Now, for the game itself. Everything about it is just bigger and more epic. I mean, look at this. Maybe they overused slow-mo a bit. Who am I kidding? I love slow motion. The car combat is the perfect evolution of the series. It mixes up the fighting, which is still very interesting and versatile, with driving sequences. The only thing that's a bit of a bummer is that you won't be using the flying mechanics nearly as often. There's also a very expansive upgrade system for combat abilities, car upgrades, car combat system, traversal and more. The story is similarly grand. Scarecrow has launched a terror attack on Gotham City and has caused a citywide evacuation. But don't let me spoil all that for you. And even the graphics, which already look great in Arkham City, look even better. And with everything on high, it's hard to tell that this is an 8-year-old game. I mean, it looks better than Suicide Squad, in my opinion. And lastly, let me mention that I chose this game over Spider-Man, which also runs beautifully on the Steam Deck, by the way, and could have been here in Batman's place. But let's be honest, Batman did it first. And who's more badass?
You're coming with me.
I have to say, I'm having so much fun playing some of these older games, many of which I haven't played in years. And what's even more surprising is how well these older games hold up. PS5 era graphics look amazing, but even now, PS4 graphics still look pretty good to me. And this is a story of how you die. That's how this next game starts. That's not a threat, but that's a promise. This is one of the hardest games I've ever played. But let it be known that I'm a wimp when it comes to video games. This is Project Zomboid. I've tried this game so many times, only to quit again after a few hours and then come back to it a few months later. This doesn't sound like much of a recommendation, but this is one of the more deep and unique open world games on this list. I don't think I've played a deeper simulation game yet. The crafting system alone is massive. There's cooking, learning, driving, fortifying, farming, fixing your car, you name it, and it's in this game. It's really amazing what they've managed to fit into this game. It's just so freaking hard. So, let's address the elephant in the room. This game is no looker. I mean, The Sims from the early 2000s look better. But what's worse is that it doesn't run at a stable 60 frames per second. There are significant drops and lags down to 45 or even 40 frames per second. On the bright side, you really don't need 60 frames per second for this kind of game. Speaking of bright sides, if you can get over the graphics and performance issues here, there is a very rich and detailed simulation game to be discovered here. That is, if you can persevere and unlike me, not rage quit every 2 hours. I bet most of you don't remember the two crime series, Streets of LA and Streets of New York. These were mostly forgettable GTA clones, but one good thing did come out of those: sleeping dogs.
We're cops. You're a cop. I'm an undercover cop. The rules are different.
Eidos bought the then dubbed True Crime Hong Kong and redeveloped it into Sleeping Dogs, an awesome open world game set in Hong Kong where you follow Wei Shen as he goes undercover in the Sun and Yi triad. And what follows is a double agent crime story with some pretty good twists and turns. Like Mad Max, this is an early PS4 era game and it runs great on a Steam Deck. 40 to 50 frames per second with all settings on high. Push it down to medium, you get a very solid 60 frames per second. This game holds up very well with nice lighting and especially the night market look really cool. Main characters all look very good too, just don't look too close to the bystanders and side characters because they have that very distinct PS3 era blocky look. Now, you might be wondering what's so special about this seemingly 13 in a dozen GTA clone. Well, let me enlighten you. I mentioned the story earlier, which goes hand in hand with the morale system, which is basically a leveling system for a bunch of other mechanics in the game. What this means in practice is that you do missions for both the Triad and the police strategically, building up trust with both. You'll have to pay attention to both sides if you want to be successful. There is also a very in-depth fighting system which can easily rival the Batman series, but none of that compares to the awesome parkour-like traversal system the game has. Think Assassin's Creed combined with a GTA game, and it works very well. And of course, all of this in the very atmospheric Hong Kong. I would highly recommend this game. Here's one out of the left field, Forza Horizon 5. I really think this belongs on the list. Plus, it's one of my favorite racing games of all time. Why is this? First of all, the fictional map of Mexico is a huge playground of interesting activities and beautiful vistas to explore.
400 yards.
Your goal is to expand the Horizon Festival across Mexico as the champion. You do this through accolades, which you get from winning races, exploring, racing tasks, and so forth. Using these, you can buy new areas for racing or upgrade already existing areas. It's a simple premise, solely designed with the purpose of getting you from race to race. It's effective and addictive. You're never more than a few minutes away from an unlocked area, car, race, upgrade, you name it. Secondly, there is performance. This is clearly a well-optimized game. With all settings on high and even some ray tracing, we get a very solid 30 to 35 frames per second. When you turn ray tracing off, we get frames between 40 and 45. There's also upscaling available. AMD FSR, AMD CAS, and Intel XeSS, which all yield very similar results. Dropping performance to medium and low gives us frames between 50 and 60 and 55 and 70 respectively. But I personally love the look of this game and I'd rather go for quality. Setup and install are easy too. It will run right out of the box, but you will have to sign into an Xbox account the first time playing. If you're looking for something different in your open world games, this might well be the game for you. The next two entries will come as a surprise to absolutely no one, as they're pretty much customary on a list like these. First one being Red Dead Redemption 2. This is an absolute powerhouse of a game that doesn't need any introduction. Let's talk performance. This game runs very well with a combination of medium to high settings and FSR on quality. And settings like these yield a comfortable 30 to 40 frames per second, even under the most harrowing of circumstances. And let's be honest, this is not the fastest of games, so 60 frames per second isn't really needed. To me, it's an absolute miracle that it runs so well on the Steam Deck. And I understand that something like Night City, with all of its inhabitants going about their business, is much harder on a system than, say, a Sunset over the American frontier. But I sure know which one I think is prettier. There is so much going on in this game that I want to talk about, but we won't, because we don't have time. But what I will say is what I love most about this game. It's the Vanderlinde gang, your raggedy band of outlaws. Criminals, pariah, killers and scam artists. But also a group of friends that stick together in a world that no longer accepts people like them. They're unable and unwilling to change with the times. The writing of both the story and the characters in this game is so amazing. The story will grip you and not let you go till 80 hours later and you've experienced all the ups and oh so painful downs of the Vanderlinde gang. This is a game I can't get enough of. As for the second obligatory entry on this list, I'll give you a hint. It's another Rockstar game. Manhunt. This game is way underrated and also not an open world game. No, I'm talking about GTA 5. This game still does things that no open world game has done since, like the amazing storytelling that weaves together three narratives into one. And the progression of the gameplay loop is also quite different from what we usually see in games like these. At every point in the story, you're working towards pulling off increasingly complex heists, all with escalating consequences and repercussions. Like in Red Dead 2, the writing and storytelling is all so well done, and it elevates the game to the next level. With the game being over 10 years old, it probably comes as no surprise that it runs very well on the Steam Deck. With medium to high settings, we pretty much get 60 to 80 frames per second in any situation. This is one of the older games on the list, and it has aged extremely well, and it looks better than some of the newer games on the list, I think. Startup is a bit of a pain. Like with Red Dead 2, you'll have to sign in to the Rockstar launcher before you can play the game, but you'll only have to do this once, and then you're set. Not much else needs to be said about this one, I think. Man, I can't wait for GTA 6. Since we haven't had enough zombies on the list, I added another one. Maybe I should have done a zombie list. Either way, this is Days Gone, an underappreciated Sony special. This game really got criticized a lot for its boring mission structure, world and story building, and I mostly agree with the first two. The story is alright. You follow charismatic biker Deacon St. John a few years into the zombie apocalypse. He's trying to find his wife who was presumed dead, but apparently isn't. The story is told to some pretty lame flashbacks, but it's all just charming enough to be entertaining. I just wish the game wouldn't take itself so serious. There's very few laughs to be had, and I think the game could use some.
That's what she said!
Yes, this is probably not a game you play solely for the story, but its redeeming qualities lie elsewhere. The enemy encounters. Like in any self-respecting zombie apocalypse, there are a number of mandatory enemies. There is of course the garden variety zombie, enemies of the humankind, lawless gangs and things like that. More unique type of zombies like screamers and the massive zombies, appropriately called breakers. But this game really shines when you run into a zombie horde. I am talking massive hordes of zombies. This always turns into a harrowing fight for survival. Usually, you see them coming from a mile away, but sometimes you stumble right into the open arms of a horde of zombies. And that's when the real fun begins. Escaping these hordes is as exhilarating as it's difficult. They're fast and scary and won't let you go without a fight. Let's talk performance. For a late era PS4 game, this runs very decent. It's even Steam Deck verified, I believe. Out of the box, it runs very well. Settings on high to medium gives us a decent steady frame rate, mostly around to 30 frames per second. With all that said, this is a fun game that runs well on the Steam Deck. Play it. And lastly, what kind of list would this be without a Ubisoft open world Collectaton game in it? This is exactly what you expect it to be. Synchronizing the map, chasing down activities, forced narrative between modern day and historical storylines.
What the hell is that?
But also a beautiful recreation of Dark Ages England that runs surprisingly well on the Steam Deck. Engaging fighting, stealth and RPG mechanics, cool raids on churches, monasteries and castles, and just overall lots of Viking badassery. In essence, you follow around Ivar, who is attempting to set up a new Viking clan in England and in the process pisses off all the forces that be. It's simple and fun. And man, this game is pretty. I know big open Ubisoft worlds are usually pretty. I liked Origins and Odyssey too, but they've really outdone themselves with Valhalla, and it translates very well to the small screen of the Steam Deck. Also noteworthy, HDR is supported for the Steam Deck OLED, making it pop all the more. As I mentioned earlier, it all runs very well. The out-of-the-box preset is high, which gives us consistent frame rates between 35 and 25 frames per second. And here are some other settings I tried. Overall, it runs very nicely, and given that this is the newest game on the list, that gives me hope for the Steam Deck in the future. I haven't really finished this game yet, so it's possible my recommendation is hasty, but overall I'm really enjoying it and I would highly recommend it so far. And with that, check out this video so you know what games not to play on the Steam Deck. Other than that, I hope to see you in the next one.